Fava beans fall into a group of beans called fresh shelled beans. They can also be dried, however, in which case they fall into the dried bean category. They're also known as horse beans, broad beans, and Windsor beans, and since we live in the South, you can also call them shelly beans. And you can use them in most of the recipes that you would find for any other beans that fall in any of those categories, such as cranberry beans or winged beans. So they have a lot of versatility, and if you can't find a recipe or a use just for fava beans, you have some other things to look for. They do take a little bit more time to prepare than most other kinds of beans. First of all, unless they're very, very young, you're not going to want to eat the pod. It's going to be too tough. So you want to remove the beans from the pod. And if you pull up on the end here, you can usually get the string to come along with you. And then it's simply a matter of opening the pod. You notice the pod is very well cushioned, and you may find up to 10 beans within the pod. Now at this point, with peas or other kinds of beans, they'd be ready to go ahead and use, but not with fava beans. They take a few more steps in that they then need to be blanched. Now to blanch them, you put the beans themselves in about 4 cups of water. This will work for about, a pound of in-pod or unshelled beans will give you about a ½ cup of shelled. So use about 2 pounds, you have about 1 to 2 cups here. And you put those in 4 cups of water that's boiling. Let them simmer for 3 to 5 minutes until a fork will penetrate it easily. Then you put it under cold water in a colander and strain it to stop the cooking, because you don't want that cooking to go on and continue to cook the bean inside the pod. And when it's cool enough to handle, then you're ready to go on with the next step, which is removing the individual skins from the beans themselves. Now you can use a knife to do this, or you can use your fingernail, which is the quicker method for me. Simply make a hole big enough and then squeeze it and the bean pops out. Be a little bit careful, because if you're not, the beans are going to go shooting across the room. It's a good idea because it's a tedious process. If you can have as many people helping you as possible in order to get this process done. Now the beans themselves will have a silky or a smooth texture as opposed to a starchy texture like lima beans, although they do look very, very similar. But at this stage they do need additional cooking. What you do at this point is put them back into boiling water, and depending on what you're going to do with them, cook them anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. That also depends on the size of the bean and the maturity of the bean, just until they're tender. And you may need to do a taste test to make sure that you get them to where you want them to be. We've got them at that stage here now. They've already been cooked, blanched first and then cooked, and now we're ready to use them. Notice the bright green color on them. These beans have actually been in use in China for over 5,000 years, so they've been around a lot. They're also very popular in France and in the Near East. In Egypt, for instance, there's a breakfast dish with these that people that often have for breakfast. What we're doing here today is fava bean provinciale. And I have a tablespoon of vegetable oil of your choice, olive oil, peanut oil, just vegetable oil, a good cooking one, and a clove of garlic that's been minced, and either 2 or 3 shallots or a small onion we'll add to this, and stir them around. Now we want to cook the onion until it becomes translucent and the flavors begin to mellow. If you had a little bit more time than I've got here today. And if you need to, you can add a little bit of water to it, because you don't want it to dry out. You don't want to prevent the onion from scorching. Now to that, we'd add 3 medium tomatoes that are chopped. And you'd let that cook down so that it decreases in volume to about you lose about 1/3 of what you started with, so that flavors and the textures all begin to mellow out. And once that is completed, then to that, you'd add the fava beans and let that continue to cook for just a couple of minutes, because at this point all you're wanting to do is heat them up. They've already had all the cooking that they need. Notice the pretty colors that you get when you do this. And you want to stir it as gently as you can, because if any of the beans are a little bit mature, one of the things you'll find happening is that they'll split in 2. Now also to this, I'm going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne and 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and stir those together. And one of the things you need to remember or to know about fava beans is that if you're of Mediterranean ancestry, there are some people in that category, and some others as well, but primarily Mediterranean peoples, who lack an enzyme that's necessary to digest the fava bean, and they can have a very allergic reaction to this. Sometimes it's mild, and it can be as severe as coma. So if you are in that category, It may be to the point where you even will get a reaction if you smell the pollen from the bean. So take that into consideration before you begin a big heaping helping of them. You might want to try a small amount first. That's basically all there is to fava beans. They are a good source of fiber. They are fairly low in calories, similar to other kinds of beans. A cup of served fava beans will give you about 110 calories. Low in fat, low in cholesterol, in fact no cholesterol until you begin to do some of the additions that we do with normal food preparation. This is a good way to try something new. I hope you'll give fava beans a try, and if you don't have those, remember you can substitute any of the other fresh beans or shelly beans in this recipe and go ahead and give it a try. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.